Introduction. Explanations of language mixing. Now in the coming modules, we are going to deal with different explanations given regarding language mixing in bilinguals. So the basic questions that these modules are dealing with are: what is the nature of language or grammar in the mind of a bilingual? Then, how do these coexist in the mind of the bilingual? And then, is the acquisition of two grammars simultaneous or is it sequential? That is, whether the bilinguals learn the grammar of a language, of one language, and then they move on to learn the grammar of the second language, or do they learn the grammars of both languages to which they are exposed simultaneously? And then, of course, there is this question: is language acquisition similar in bilinguals to the monolinguals, or do they follow a different path of learning a language? And then there is also the question that we would like to know, and that is, how is the knowledge of two language systems used by bilinguals? That is, at what time do they code switch? Why do they code switch? And what meaning does it hold for them? And also the question, how is the knowledge of two language systems actually used by bilinguals in a given context? Now, apart from those questions, there are questions related to bilinguals which deal with this aspect of language system itself. So we would like to know whether in the mind of the bilinguals there is a single or unitary language system from which they exploit both languages, or do these languages or grammar of code switching, is it one, or are these two in their entity? So what we are trying to say over here is, and why researchers are trying to understand these dimensions are, that since bilingualism is a widespread phenomenon throughout the world, people need to see whether bilingualism is advantageous in terms of learning a language, or whether bilingualism carries certain disadvantages in terms of cognition or the development of the brain. So they would like to know or understand whether how bilingual brains operate. Are they the same or different from the monolingual brains? So if my child is bilingual, for instance, in a very simple example, I would like to know, is it harming his or her intellectual progress, or is it not harming the child or actually benefiting the child? Then the whole question is about how do bilinguals code switch? What about the grammar of code switching? Do they actually, when the bilinguals learn a language, especially in a childhood, do they operate from a single system? That is, when a child is very young and you're talking to the child, does the child actually appreciate that these are two different language systems that he or she is being exposed to? Or do they believe it's a single language and they use it indiscriminately? This latter one is actually a huge question which we will try to answer in the coming modules. And then, of course, there is this linguistic dimension of code switching, which how do you actually code switch? When do people code switch? And we discussed this unitary language system. And of course, this is all followed by the focus on explanations given for language mixing. So there is no one answer to these questions, but researchers differ regarding what the answers to these questions are, depending on research evidence. But when we talk about research evidence also, please remember it really depends on the stance of the bilingual and how of the researcher actually, and how the researcher is researching the subject, what methods that those people are actually using, that can lead to different types of results and make comparisons difficult. Anyway, there are some explanations given regarding language mixing, which is it might occur because of this restricted lexicon, that is restricted repertoire of the words that a child has. It might be because of certain structural linguistic factors. We will discuss what these are. And then it might be because of some universal operating principles that are at work when any child is learning a language. And these are the ones that we will look at in more detail.